Well, it's almost St. Patrick's Day, and well, I'm having trouble coming up with an Irish beer that I want to brew. So, although I'm probably going to regret doing this, I'm going to ask for some help from a friend. Maybe you guys remember Lucky?
It's me, Lucky.
Oh man, I already regret it. Well, the truth is, I'm having some trouble coming up with an Irish beer for St. Patrick's Day. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, there's only one beer that comes to mind when I think of Irish, and that's a Guinness.
A Guinness?
No, better than a Guinness. A Duinness.
A Duinness? Okay, what would even be in that beer?
I've got just the recipe for you. Here it is. Brew it up. You'll see.
All right, well, let's see what this recipe is all about. All right, I know you guys all hit that subscribe button because you're awesome, and you hit that like button because it helps out the channel a lot. But if you really want to be awesome, hit that join button below and become a channel member. Members enjoy awesome perks like some exclusive recipes, my brew day sheets to help you out along the way and take some notes, and you get to watch my videos early before anybody else. So hit that join button and become awesome. Number one, this is not a Guinness. This is just a Guinness with D's taped over the top of the label. Nice try. Let's see how good Lucky is at recipes. This is going to be a dry stout like a Guinness with a couple of twists, I guess. It's going to have 6.5 pounds of Maris Otter, 1.5 pounds of Flaked Barley, 1.25 pounds of roasted barley, but we're going to be adding that as a late kettle addition, so we're not putting that right away in our mash, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And then just 1/4 pound of oak smoked wheat malt. This will give it just a little extra twang along with some lactic acid way later in the process before packaging to give it kind of that Guinness signature roasty kind of twang that you taste inside of a Guinness. For hops, we're keeping it really simple. It's East Kent Goldings EKG hops. We're going to be adding 2 ounces right at 60 minutes. There's only 4 alpha acids in these, so it's going to keep that bitterness fairly low even though we're adding 2 full ounces right at the beginning. And then to get it up to where Guinness normally has their IBUs between 40 and 45, we're going to be adding another ounce at about 15 minutes left in the boil apparently. And for yeast, we're using Omega's Irish Ale, which is OYL005. I did make a starter for this, so we're ready to go once we're ready for fermentation. Now remember, this is a dry stout, and so we want this mash temperature to be a little bit on the lower end, right? So we don't want to get up into the 150s. We want this to stay dry, almost like a Pilsner, right? And so we're going to keep the mash temperature at about 148. So we have the water already in our claw hammer system. We're going to go ahead and get the power turned on to this guy. I'm going to set our mash temperature to 148. And then we're going to go ahead and start heating this up. I also like to start recirculating at the same time, so we're going to go ahead and start the pump as well. All right, now that our water is starting to heat up, let's talk about the barley and some of those later addition grains. And so there's going to be 2 types of barley in this one. That's going to give it that roasty coffee-like flavor and the color later on. And so we have flaked barley that will help with that smooth, creamy mouthfeel, and it's also going to give it some of that color, but not very much. Most of that color comes from the roasted barley, which is this darker grain here. I've already got this milled up like I normally would through my grain mill, but I'm not going to add it in with the rest of the mash. I'm going to wait until all the way through our 60-minute mash, and then I'm going to add that in, stir it in real good, and I'm going to turn it up to the 170 that I do to mash out right before we pull our basket. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want to give any of these astringent flavors that might come by adding this in a little bit early. And so in other videos, I've done this for a black IPA where I did some steeping. In this case, I'm not going to put any water or anything on these things right away. I'm just going to add this in the last 10 minutes, allow it to soak up that color, and then we're gonna transfer it out of there and start our boil. As always, I have my water additions and everything already in here. If you're wondering about how to add water salts or pH levels and all that kind of thing, I have a video linked in the description below that will go through that entire process and make it super simple. For this one, the pH is actually gonna be a little bit higher than normal. We want it about 5.5, 5.6-ish pH, which is a little more than normal. Usually I'd be shooting for about 5.2 to 5.3. We want the pH though, at the end of the day, to be way lower, especially when we get into the keg. So we are gonna be adding some lactic acid to give it some of that twang, but I'm gonna do it in the keg and a little bit at a time to my taste. Per usual, I am gonna be adding 4 grams of ascorbic acid, and then I'm also gonna be adding some yeast nutrient and a Whirlflock tablet, because this is a clear beer even though it's dark. While we're waiting for this thing to heat up, let's try one of these Duinesses. Here goes nothing. The Duinness. One thing that you'll notice about this beer is its dark color and really creamy, frothy head. And that's due to this being served a lot of the times on nitro, including in these bottles. This is the draft stout, but it's done in nitro. Now, it's not 100% nitrogen. It is a mixture of nitrogen, CO2, 75-25, and you can actually get that at some of your homebrew supply stores or even a oxygen or a welding supply store. I was able to pick this up, so my beer eventually will be on tap using nitro. And we'll talk about how to pour one of these things from a tap when we get to that point. All right, we're just hitting our mash temperature right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and shut off the heat and my pump. And so this will continue to heat up a little bit because of the element in the bottom, but we don't want it to get too hot because we want this to stay dry and with that lower mash temperature. I'm gonna go ahead and shut off the valves on both sides of my pump, and I'm gonna remove the lid for just a minute so we can get mashing in. And remember, we're not adding our darker grains, we're just adding the flaked barley, the maris otter, and that little bit of smoked malt to give it that little something something. Get that good and mixed up. Make sure there's no dough balls. We're gonna add that 4 grams of ascorbic acid. That's gonna help with any type of oxidation or anything down the road that might cause oxidation, especially if you're bottling these things. You can find that ascorbic acid in my Amazon shop, which I have linked in every video for all the equipment that I use. No matter what it is, I have it linked in my Amazon shop. Doesn't cost you anything, but helps out the channel a lot. All right, now that's good and stirred in. We're gonna get this lid back on here. We're gonna start our pump and our heat back on again. And now we wait for 60 minutes. All right, now that our Duinness mash is heating up, we're gonna go ahead and get our hops all weighed out. Again, we're gonna need 2 ounces right at 60 minutes and then another ounce at 15 minutes left in the boil of those EKG East Kent Golding hops.
Smells delicious.
What are you doing, Lucky? Get out of there. That guy is driving me bananas already. All right, guys, we're about an hour in, so we're gonna go ahead and add those darker grains. That's that roasted barley. It's about 1.25 pounds of it. We're gonna go ahead and shut off this pump. I'm gonna close the valve so that doesn't leak out anywhere. We're gonna go ahead and stir these in. So I'm just gonna dump these guys right in there. I'm gonna give it a good stir around. Ooh, you can already smell that roasty flavor. I don't want to lose too much heat here, so I'm gonna go ahead and open up the valves again, get this lid back on and recirculating. All right, you can already see that darker color starting to come through. That's awesome. We're gonna go ahead and recirculate this for 10 minutes, but I'm gonna be turning it up to 170 degrees. We don't want a lot of starch conversion to happen with this. That will prevent any of those acidic flavors. So we're just gonna try and get that color off of the grains. So we'll raise this up for the last 10 minutes to 170 degrees. All right, we're ready to pull these grains out. You can see the color is nice and dark now. So those colors have really gotten off that. We're gonna go ahead and shut off the pump and the heat for right now. We're gonna get this basket pulled out of here. Hook it up to our pulley, save our backs a little bit, and just slowly pull it out. We're gonna let that really drain out. Make sure we're getting all those sugars into the kettle. We don't want to rush this. We want to make sure that it's getting pulled out of there slowly and that all of that liquid gets a chance to drain out of there. All right, we got our grains pulled. We are draining the last little bit of that wort out of the grains to a bucket. Then I'll add that back in here, make sure it's clean. To get this up to a boil, what I like to do is actually hit the manual button here by holding that down and change that up to 100%. That will give it all of the heat necessary to get this up to a boil. When it starts getting into a nice rolling boil, we will then turn it down to about 62-63% to keep it at that nice constant boil. To prevent boilovers, I'm also going to be adding some Firm Cap S into this, and that will help both when we first get started and when we start adding hops. And speaking of hops, we're going to be using our hop spider that comes with the claw hammer system. So we're gonna go ahead and add that in now so that gets nice and warmed up. All right, we are up to a boil. I'm gonna go ahead and now turn this thing down, like I said, to 63. That will help it keep it at a nice constant boil. Again, that turns a little bit of that power to the element down, especially when you have this 250 version. If you have the 110, you may not need to do this, but it's always a good option if you need to do that. We are into our boil now, so we're gonna go ahead and add our 60-minute additions, which again is 2 ounces of those EKG hops. So we're gonna put those in our hop spider and set that timer for 60 minutes.
Happy, happy, happy. Ho, 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 ho. Hops.
Dang it, Lucky. Well, I guess that's our 15-minute edition of EKG hops. At least he didn't stir it around or anything. One thing I also want to mention is when I took my starting pre-boil gravity, that was a little bit high, and I realized that the water volume, the wort volume in my kettle was a little bit low. And so we'll probably be adding a little bit of water at the end of the day back to get this to a 4.2 ABV beer. So very close to the original gravity, which should be right around 1.044. And so the pre-boil gravity was close to that. So I know I'm gonna have to add, upwards of a gallon of water or so. So I was kind of way off my water. That's no big deal. You can definitely do that. I added a portion of a Camden tablet to about a gallon of water, and that's sitting off to the side, and so I can add that later. And I'm not gonna add it all at one time. I'm gonna add a little by little until I get it to the gravity that I want it to be reading on my refractometer. Because this Guinness is supposed to be 4.2%. If I was to leave it at this higher gravity, I'm gonna have a higher ABV beer, and that's not going to be to style. All right, with about 10 minutes left, I'm gonna be adding a Whirlflock tablet and some yeast nutrient to get that yeast off and started. All right, we got about 2 minutes left in our boil. We made sure that we got everything hooked up as far as our chiller is concerned. I'm using the plate chiller that comes with the claw hammer system for this one and their pump. And then we're gonna be cooling this thing down by recirculating into the kettle. So we're gonna go ahead and use the clamp that claw hammer gives you and the return hose that's gonna go back into our kettle. This is gonna help us cool a lot of that wort down before we transfer it into our fermenter to make sure that it's nice and cool. So without further ado, I'm gonna get my water turned on. I'm gonna start my recirculation and then get this into a fermenter. Oh yeah, you can tell the beer is already cool as it's coming through here, so that's pretty good. We probably won't need to recirculate very long at all. All right, so like I said before, we know where our volume was gonna be really low. 5 gallons is right about here on this thing, so I was actually shooting for a little bit more than 5 gallons. So I might be about a gallon or so off. I added that Camden tablet in here. We're gonna add about up to the 5 gallon mark, and then I'm gonna take a hydrometer reading and see where we're at. In my case, I have a refractometer, but either way, see where you're at and then adjust as necessary. All right, so we added that. I'm gonna go ahead and just swirl it around a little bit, and only because I wanna make sure it's good and mixed up so it's not, we don't have water or wort on the bottom. And then I'm gonna take my syringe here and I'm gonna take a hydrometer reading, or refractometer, I should say. Again, we're shooting for 1.044. I'm actually at 1.043. So that's almost exactly where I want to be. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to leave it alone. So I got my red tilt hydrometer. We're going to go ahead and sanitize that really good and throw that in there. That is not only going to give us a reading, but it's also going to eventually give us a temperature. If you haven't seen my video on a tilt Pico, I'm also going to be adding that as well right now. And so it's that easy. It will send me a Google Sheets. It will update every 15 minutes, and I'll know exactly how this beer is doing every day. If you want to check that video out, I'll have it in the video description below. All right, and just like that, our beer is done and it's ready to pour a pint. And for this beer, I actually put it on nitro. That requires getting beer gas, which is essentially 75% nitrogen and 25% carbon dioxide. To carb this up, I actually hooked it up at about 30 PSI for about 24 hours and then hooked it to the beer gas. And you really want that to be at about 30 to 35 PSI. And to do this, you don't want to use a regular faucet. You need the faucet that actually has the little micro screen in there to create those smaller bubbles. And so I actually have installed one on my kegerator. Alternatively, I also have the little Intertap spout that attaches to the Intertap or Nuka tap handles. This is that larger stout spout. So you just basically unscrew the standard tip and then you screw on this one. It's got that little screen right in there. And this is a perfect way, you don't have to buy a whole new faucet. If you have these Intertap handles, which I also use the growler filler and other attachments, they have an attachment just for stouts that works great and only cost about 16 bucks. I'll have a link in the video description below. And to make things really fun, I even bought some actual Guinness glasses, which they say to fill up to the harp and then let it settle for about 90 seconds or so and then fill it up the rest of the way to get that nice, creamy, frothy head on there. And then we'll invite the other guy to come and taste it out and see how we did. All right, and there we have it. The Guinness and the Duinness beers. I will say there is a difference specifically in color, and that is actually my fault. The reason is because I actually used an American roasted barley instead of a German roasted barley, and it has a very different lovibond number. And I noticed that when I was first tasting it. It's not crazy different when it's in a full glass, but it definitely should be darker. And so in this particular case, they both have that nice creamy, frothy nitro head on it. They both are dark, and that still fits within the BJC style guidelines, but I did notice that difference. So if you're trying to pick out your roasted barley, make sure you're getting the German flavor. Before we invite Lucky to come and join us, let's go and taste these two, and then we'll get his opinion on the Duinness and see if I did all right or not. First things first, we're gonna go with the original Guinness, see how it tastes. Yep, it's that dry, crisp, but yet also got a little hint of roasty and funkness with those creamy bubbles. So you get that dryness and the creaminess at the same time, which is kind of complex because of that nitro flavor. But the Guinness really comes across with that roasted barley notes, and again that creaminess from the nitro. You get that right away. Excellent beer as always. Let's see how it stands up to the Duinness. Actually very good. I think there are some differences, but it's actually kind of subtle and differences that I kind of like, to be honest with you. I think if I would use that darker barley, it would have given a little bit more of those barley notes, but it's not far off flavor wise. I do think it's a little bit thinner in the malt flavor, but not by much at all. I think I'm just being kind of nitpicky. Secondly, I added a little bit of that smoked malt, and I really enjoy that in this. I think it does kind of come across with some of the funk that you get, and I did think I was going to have to add some lactic acid to get that funk, but because of that smoked malt that I put in here, I actually kind of enjoy it. You kind of get a little bit like this funky, roasty, smoky flavor in this one anyway. Not quite smoky, but that's funk, and I think the smoke, the little tiny bit of that smoked malt that we used, those smoked oat malts, really kind of adds to that complexity. It's actually a really decent beer. Both of these are fantastic. Both of them are a dry, great stout. They both have a very similar backbone, and again, both of them have a very complex flavor. One of them is kind of that funk, which you could add the lactic acid to instead of adding that smoked malt. And this one, though, man, I really enjoy a little tiny hint of that roasty smokiness in the background. It's very subtle. And if you didn't tell me it was in there, it'd be hard for me to kind of pick out by just tasting it. So let me pour Lucky a glass and see what he thinks. All right, Lucky. Here's your Duinness beer. How do you think I did? And be honest, because I can take it.
Ho, 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 ho. What have we here? It's a Guinness, if I've ever seen one. But how does it taste? I'll be the judge of that. Ooh, that's a good Irish stout, if you ask me.
So you think it's really that good, huh?
I'd be drinking these all day.
All right, well, there you got it. Lucky
So
approves.
good. I like and approve.
All right, Lucky, well, take your beer. Thanks for your help, and hopefully we don't see you until next year.
You'll be seeing me soon.
Well, there you got it. It's Lucky approved. As always, I'll have this entire recipe in the video description. I'll even explain that variant, so in case that you want to make one with the correct SRM. But other than that, this is a fantastic beer and one that I am going to enter into some competitions because it does meet those Irish Stout style guidelines. Very, very delicious. One you should definitely make all year round. This is going to be a favorite for those who love a good Irish Stout. So with that, leave any comments below. Happy brewing and cheers.
Gotta get me a refill.
Hey, thanks for watching my video. You're awesome. You want to be even more awesome? Hit that join button and become a member. You'll get exclusive members-only recipes and other perks like Brew Day sheets, and watch my videos early as they drop before anyone else. So hit that join button below, become a member, and be awesome.